Hello people. So I wanted to put forward a kind of new concept, not really a concept, a model, an idea, a something like that. It's just a way of looking at things that I think clarifies things in a few different ways. And I think it has a lot of applications. It's just something that just came to me. I will explain probably in this video when it came to me and what I think the applications are. It's very simple, only got three parts to it. So, substance, process, and pattern. And this is something that you can use to break down most areas of life in general, I suppose. The first thing is substance. Now, substance is pure life and living without any attempts to change or adapt that. So these are the social events you have, the relationship issues you have before they have been really labelled. So once you label something as lying or whatever it happens to be, that starts going to process, which we will mention in just a sec. This is the unprocessed emotions, and it's very important that in this place that everything stays completely unprocessed. Then we move on to process. And process is some kind of analytical framework, some kind of labeling or wisdom that takes this unstructured life information and starts to analyze it with, assumedly, the eventual point of trying to find improvement. So an example of this might be within a philosophical framework, but I'll come to that. In a kind of therapy or narcissism type of situation, this is where you have the breakdown of what the narcissist's reality is like and the breakdown of all the different terms we then use to clarify things. So gaslighting is one of them. A person was trying to lie and you weren't taking the lie, therefore they tried to convince you you are mad. That is a gaslighting thing. At any of these points, there can be absolutely huge errors. This isn't a model of correctness. This is a model of just something that throws a bit more light on how things are. Within the mainstream Christian framework, this might be the process is the emotional effort of committing yourself to Jesus, so to speak. Within the human design chart, it's looking at the human design chart. It doesn't really go a lot further than that. You can say it's time to use your sacral and respond to and fro, or it's time to look at this and this will bring insight into the situation. There's not a whole lot of pattern to human design, and that's what I will come to. Then we get at the end to pattern, and pattern is the large life meaning type of thing. So what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning to existence? The pattern is the macro, the overarching thing. I think this is significant because process and pattern are very often considered the same kind of thing. And I think that can create confusion. There are some other thoughts I've had in relation to substance and process, and I will also come to those. But it came to me, I was looking at two different speakers on narcissistic abuse, or content creators or YouTubers, something like that. I just searched for the second one here and I was not able to find it. Searched through my entire YouTube history, and I've definitely watched him many times before, and I couldn't find him, therefore he may have been banned. But there were two people talking about it. I watched two different videos and I realised they were talking about completely different things, or coming at it at a very different way. One of them was Les Carter, and the other one was, I don't know who he was, I can't remember him, but I will describe him. I think his name was David. He was bald. He talked about the Bible and narcissism. And there was something in his title that was something like King This, or something like empowering in some manner. Anyway, after I listened to it, Les Carter, he summarizes a problem at the beginning of his videos, and then he says it's not like that with the narcissist because of this technical thing that the narcissist doesn't do or doesn't agree with. Whereas this other guy, we'll call him David, was talking in general philosophical terms and only lightly referring to the things the narcissist actually does. It was kind of like, you need to believe in yourself and not doubt yourself when they come at you, that kind of thing. But it was quite deeply philosophical. Like I said, he talks about the Bible quite a lot, quite a committed Christian, and he seems to have integrated that into his material. And I realized they were very different messages, but they were in the same kind of category. Like, you could think that they were the same thing, but they're not really. And I realized that this substance process pattern explains quite a lot in life to me. So you have your substance, you have your problems. I mean, it's usually problems that are going to get processed. And then you have your process, and people have various different ideas on what this is. And you have the pattern at the end. You have the philosophy that this is the meaning of it all. And one pattern, it seems to me, can apply to many different processes. If you have a central philosophy, say Soren Kierkegaard, who believed everybody's meaning of life was their subjective experience with the creator, or Stefan Molyneux, who believes the meaning of life is to pursue virtue. This can apply to many different things. This can apply to your work, to your relationships, to your family life, etc., etc. But the process will be individual to each thing in general. And when looking at this, I think it starts to reveal where there are problems. If you look at this model and you compare it to things, you can start to see where there are issues. It starts to highlight things a little bit. So I'll give you some examples. The first example will be someone that's actually got it all right. Like, this is what it looks like when it does work. And that is Stefan Molyneux's ideas. The substance is when people phone him on the call-in shows. And if you notice, he gets very deep into what actually happened. Like, he doesn't allow them to verbally protect themselves from saying the uncomfortable truths or weaseling out of something like that. And that's the substance. The substance is always the biggest thing. Like, at each stage you lose part of what was there before. So you can only process so much of life, obviously. You don't process absolutely everything you experience. You process what it seems intelligent to process. And so then you go over to the process. For Stefan Molyneux, that is the idea of objectivism and the idea of evolutionary psychology. And then the pattern, the meaning that brings it all together, is some variation of pursuing virtue and pursuing truth. That's the more abstract meaning. The pattern, I think, tends to be more abstract. And this is where you've lost quite a lot of what's gone before, because even the processing, you can't take every single thing that you process when you make a final abstract law out of that. But there are plenty of examples where this is less complete. So one of them I've noticed, one of the little control things that I notice in people, is whenever you have a kind of process and a pattern, these second two parts, you tend to have people that want to be in control of that. That is actually a position of power, the process and the pattern. And you can see this in the Christian church, because what the Christian church does, the modern Christian church, is they tend to say our pattern is correct, and they kind of ignore the first two stages. Like, they do bring some substance and some process in relation to testimonies, but their big thing is the pattern is correct. The Jesus is the saviour of everything, and everything, all that is correct and kind of tyrannical in a sense. There is no process for really dealing with life itself, because the idea of giving yourself over to Jesus doesn't kind of work in most cases. Like in some, I'm sure it does. But if people have problems, they kind of aren't really solved, and they're just told Jesus is the leader of everything. So that would be an example of something that is weighted very strongly on the pattern. There's no real process. So for Stefan Molyneux, that's objectivity. And so there's no real look at the substance. They do have some put together ideas, some more high grounding, but it doesn't have a lot of strength to it. And it isn't actually much based on what Jesus actually said a lot of the time. Another is these New Age spiritual types of communities. In those, there is a lot of emphasis on process. You look at your astrology chart, or you do some energy healing. But one thing that I find interesting in some, not all, some spiritual communities is there always has to be, in my understanding, it's like a kind of pyramid with the pattern on the top. There always has to be most of the energy and substance. The most energy given in these things is people being open and honest about their lives. But if you are open and honest about your life, then someone can apply a process, some sort of judgment, and realize that you don't really know what you're talking about because your life's a complete mess, or whatever it happens to be. So a lot of these spiritual communities, they will be all about the process. They will be all about this teaching is the right thing and all that kind of stuff. But there won't be enough substance in the community. If somebody comes into that community with a retelling of their own experience, then everybody might want to help that person. But none of those other people will confide their own experiences. And therefore there is a mismatch with the substance, the process and the pattern. There is a huge amount of substance being offered by some people and none by others. And that becomes unbalanced because everybody wants to be the process. Everybody wants to be providing the answer because they see themselves as having authority in that position. The human design is another example of this kind of issue. And I think this goes very, very deep into the human design, to the extent that the human design believes the process is the pattern. Like, they think you follow your design and everything works out. And the pattern there is everything works out because it does. That there isn't really a lot of pattern. You have your own experiences, then you have the process, and it's a hugely complex process, the human design, all these lines and gates and centers and stuff. But I don't take as completely legitimate, or I don't assume legitimacy of the idea that we're all created as kind of perfect in a way. It seems to me that Ra Hu had a very left-wing kind of idea that we're all sort of angelic and positive and we're just born with all these brilliant traits, and that anything that comes along that conditions us is a bad thing. And I don't think it is a positive thing. I think it is a quite distorted viewpoint, actually. The human design says you are a splenic manifestor, you are emotional generator, you are, a pure manifesting generator. You just follow that and everything's fine. But I don't know whether I believe that. And also, I'm just showing here, really, it's showing process, but it's not going to pattern. It's not going to the meaning of everything, because rather, who says that the human design is an amoral system? Now, in the communities that it's used, it is, I think, used by very positive people in general. But the system explicitly doesn't define that. Now, this doesn't mean that all of these parts of the ideal here, meme, whatever it is, the process even, are correct. I mean, you can have a crazy process. So what does feminism say? It says, whatever your experience is, men are bad. So that's another one of these pattern heavy things. And the process is usually some variation of believing in some deep emotional, micro abuses or something like that. And also the support of the power of the state to redistribute wealth. I mean, you can have a process that makes everything just worse, or one that doesn't really provide a lot of anything, really. So one that I think about every so often is the narcissistic abuse ideas. There isn't a lot of clarity in what a lot of these terms mean. If the narcissist does it, it's stonewalling. If you do it, it's going grey rock. If the narcissist does it, it's discarding. If you do it, it's going no contact. When the narcissist does it, it's a smear campaign. When you do it, it's speaking your truth. When the narcissist does it, it's emotional invalidation. When you do it, it's grey rock. So there's not a lot of coherence in this model, in my view. And I suppose in a lot of cases, not with every creator, not with every case, but in a lot of cases, the narcissism type of thing would be process heavy as well. So that's what I have to say. I have wanted to say this for months. It feels very, very profound to me. When I have thought of other things, other concepts I've wanted to talk about, I've wanted to bring this up first. This is important before I explain XYZ thing about the human design chart. What is process? What is pattern? But as I say it here, it doesn't seem that impressive. It doesn't seem that interesting. So who knows? I'll put this video out and it may serve as relevant to future videos that I have. But I do think the concept is correct. And I do think it's very important for two things. Firstly, that whole substance going to process and spiritual communities, everybody wanting to be in the process, is very controlling. And having this model allows me, at least, to spot that coming very quickly. I've known people that do that as well. Like, they literally won't tell you anything about their lives, and it's weird. But a very big thing, I think, is the human design chart. I don't believe that there is no pattern. There is no process beyond the human design itself. I don't believe that people find the human design chart and they are enlightened for the rest of time and that everything works out from that place. I just don't think it's correct. I think that there are other philosophies. You can say this person isn't relating well due to an ideal standard in comparison to an ideal standard, and we can use a human design to help us understand this. We can use a human design to show us how this person is struggling to meet this standard and how it would be better if they did meet this standard. yeah, I don't know precisely how I can make that case better. Like, as I said, it does feel that Rahu had this idea that people are born kind of perfect and everything that comes to them is conditioning and is negative. And I just don't see that to be the case. If somebody grows up with a good family, with a lot of positive experiences and support and good food and all of that, then they are conditioned in a positive way. And that is, for a lot of them, what they feel that life is about. And who are we to tell them otherwise? It comes, it relates even to a very Pauline theology idea. This idea that the positive spirits are so far above us that nothing we do really makes a difference and we can only be submissive and pray to them. And this is where the idea comes from that your works are nothing. What's it called? Your works are filthy rags. And I think that Pauline ideology concept was not at all agreed with by Jesus or any of the disciples, and it has been rigorously debunked. It's not how the positive spirits see things. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. And thank you for listening. I hope this has been profound.